Good evening. I hereby call to order the October 9th council meeting of the City of Mayfield Heights. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. DeJohn?
Present.
Mrs. Finney?
Here.
Mr. Mano?
Here.
Mr. Mercurio?
Here.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Here.
Mrs. Snyder?
Here.
Mrs. Tressi?
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. We will now move on to the acceptance of the minutes of our council meeting of September 25th. I hope everyone's had the opportunity to read the minutes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mrs. Finney. Are there any suggested changes, amendments, or deletions to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of approval of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? The minutes have been approved as written. Next, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes of our Committee of the Whole meeting, which was held September 25th, 2017. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Moved by Mrs. Snyder, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. Are there any suggested changes, deletions, or amendments to those minutes? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes of our Committee of the Whole meeting of September 25th have been approved. We will next move on to correspondence and announcements. Does anyone have any correspondence or announcements they'd like to share? Seeing none, we will move on to our reports of officers. We'll begin with our mayor, Mayor DeSico.
Thank you and good evening. Last week I had the pleasure of welcoming 85 first graders from Lander School. We started here in council chambers and where they got to ask questions, and they're always full of great questions. The parents, their parents, I should say, and teachers should be very proud of them. The way they behaved was really amazing for a bunch of first graders, a great group of kids. After the question session, they toured the service, police, fire, and recreation departments, and they learned about each department and had a chance to ask more questions. And they especially enjoyed climbing on the equipment and learning how it operated. Our staff really does a great job interacting with the kids. I received several calls last week about the outstanding job our service department has done on the Mayfield Road median and also on the Gates Mills Boulevard center strip. The calls just wanted me to pass that along, Joe, and keep up the good work. On September 28th, I attended the Cuyahoga County Mayors and City Managers meeting. We were updated on the small cell wireless issue. A Franklin County judge did block the portion of SB 331 that limited local government's ability to regulate the small cell technology within our right-of-way. But another court ruled on behalf of the cities, and then another court ruled on behalf of the state again. So right now, there's pending cases in Cuyahoga and Summit counties, but there is an effort underway to get the sides, both sides together and come up with a consensus as to how to proceed. And lastly, the Parks and Recs Senior Subcommittee held a very successful event Saturday at the Community Center. The Murder Mystery Dinner was attended by 101 amateur detectives that really enjoyed the event. To see the interaction between the actors and guests was really interesting. That was the first time I had ever been to a murder mystery dinner. It was pretty amazing. I want to thank the committee members, Marty Kelbel, Laura Blair, and Joel Weiner for their enthusiasm and hard work. Also, Sean Ward and Patty Rogeliner did a lot of work there too. And of course, our resident chefs, Andy Finaro and Steve Grano, for the delicious chicken parm and covadille dinner. And I'm sure we'll see another mystery dinner in the future. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any questions for the mayor? Seeing none, we'll move on to our Director of Law, Mr. Murphy.
It's not there. No report this evening, Madam Chairman, but I would like to request an executive session at the end of the business meeting to discuss property equity. property acquisition.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Murphy? We will next move on to a report from our Director of Finance, Mr. Tribby.
No report at this time.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Tribby? Seeing none, we will now move on to our reports of committees, commissions, and boards, and we will begin with our Building Committee, Mr. DeJohn.
Thank you, Madam President. I don't know if everyone saw in their emails that Heritage Home Program will be sending a report for mid-October to see what our usage has been. And they're looking at possibly a 2% increase for 2018. Just in case those that don't know what the Heritage Home Program is, it's a program offering technical assistance to people who own housing that's 50 years and older, and they will give you technical assistance as far as bids on home improvement projects. So they'll make recommendations on maintenance, repair, rehabilitation, additions, and modernization. And they also have low loan programs. So this is something that homeowners who have a house that's 50 years or older should look into. And the city does pay to belong to Heritage Home Program. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. DeJohn. Are there any questions for Mr. DeJohn? Seeing none, we'll move on to our Finance and Audit Committee, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam President. Finance and Audit has not met, so I have no report.
Thank you. We'll move on to our Legislative Committee, Mrs. Snyder.
Thank you, Madam President. We are currently planning a meeting for Ordinance 2017-18, Keeping Mayfield Beautiful Commission. That date should be scheduled within the next 2 weeks.
Thank you. Also, Mrs. Snyder, I'd like you to schedule a legislative meeting to discuss our building code, Chapter 1341 for rental housing. And also, can you include the meeting on the indigent legislation that we have on table?
We can do it that evening.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Are there any questions for Mrs. Snyder? Seeing none, we'll move on to Public Works and Services. Mr. Mercurio.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a quick update on Som Center Road. The work there is ahead of schedule, and asphalt will be applied this week in the evening hours, weather permitting. And also, the leaf trailer has been out collecting leaves, and just a reminder to residents to keep all branches and grass out of the leaf piles, as this can slow down the service and damage our machines, and will be delayed as a result of that. And also, I have scheduled a meeting on next Tuesday, October 17th at 6:30 to discuss the bids on Oakville Park, which I believe will be received this week. Is that correct, Joe? Oh, we did receive them last week. Okay, great. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Mercurio. Are there any questions for Mr. Mercurio? Seeing none, we'll move on to Recreation and Parks Committee. Mr. Mano.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There's still a few spots left for our popular LBJ basketball program. This program is for kids in grades K through 3rd. The Mayfield Heights Halloween party is scheduled for Saturday, October 28th at the DeJohn Community Center from 11 to 12:30 p.m. The cost is $7 per person. Tickets are now on sale. Teen Halloween will be held on Thursday, October 19th from 6 to 9 for Mayfield Middle School students in grades 6 through 8. Tickets are on sale this week during lunch periods for $10. Tickets will be on sale at the door for $12. Extra money will be needed for raffle and extra activities and food. Our Silver Social Dinner Dance will be held on Saturday, November 18th from 6:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the DeJohn Community Center. The cost is $10 per person. Join us for our dinner dance and enjoy socializing over a meal of roast beef, roasted potatoes, green beans, dessert, and beverages. Music by Turnaround. Advance registration is required by contacting Recreation Department by Friday, November 10th at 442-2627. Our October lunch bunch will be going to the Winking Lizard at Eastgate Shopping Center on October 25th at 11:30. If interested, a reservation must be made. Bus trips, we still have spots available on our bus trip 'Tis the Season, Friday, November 17th, to the Christmas Story House, Happy Dog for lunch, and we finish the day at Castle Noel. The trip is from 9:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., and the fee is $50. Includes transportation and admissions to both museums. The meal is on your own. At Wildcat Sport and Fitness, we're holding a pickleball tournament at Wildcat Sport and Fitness. This year's tournament will have a separate men's and women's doubles tournament for those 55 years and older, and will be held on October 21st from 9 a.m. to noon. The cost is $20 per team. For more information or to register, stop by Wildcat Sport and Fitness or call 995-6840. Indoor swimming lessons had 69 students in this session, which runs through October 21st. Registration for the next session begins on October 21st. For residents of the school district, the session dates are October 28th through December 9th. We also offer private swim lessons. Please call Wildcat Fitness at 995-6840 for more information. For any information on any recreation program, please call the office at 442-2627. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Mano. Are there any questions for Mr. Mano? We'll move on to Safety and Transportation Committee. Mrs. Finney.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have no report.
Thank you. We'll move on to our Board of Zoning Appeals. Mr. Mercurio.
Thank you, Madam President. We have one item on tonight's agenda, and this is more procedural in nature. If you recall, last meeting, council voted not to uphold the BZA's variance approval to allow for a commercial truck in a residential driveway. And this resolution just reverses the BZA's decision to grant that variance. And we also have a meeting tomorrow night in council chambers, 7 o'clock. We have several items on tomorrow night's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mercurio. Are there any questions for Mr. Mercurio? Okay, we'll move on to our Planning Commission. Mr. DeJohn.
Thank you, Madam President. We did not meet last Monday night, so I do not have a report.
Thank you. We will now move on to our public portion. Pursuant to Section 121.02, subsection 8, H8 of the codified ordinances, each person will be allowed 5 minutes with a maximum of 30 minutes for the entire public portion. Although this is not a time for public debate, it is your opportunity to address council with your concerns. Please know that we will not allow any personal attacks or comments. Also, if you are here in connection with an agenda item, this is your opportunity to address council. If you would like to be heard this evening, please raise your hand and be recognized. Approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. It is now 7:12, and we will open our public portion. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Chris Russ, 130 East Randolph Street in Chicago. I'm Vice President of CA Senior Living out of Chicago. We're a part of CA Ventures, and I'm here tonight to hopefully begin the process for rezoning a property on Lander Haven Drive. We have a board that will show you the exact location, but we're here as this first step to ask the council's permission to submit that rezone. CA Senior Living develops independent living, assisted living, and memory care communities across the country. We have a number already in operation, a number in construction, and including this one, 7 or 8 in development. Our closest property to here is down in Mason, Ohio, that is actually just about to open. So we're proposing to rezone 11 lots. If you can kind of hold that. Got it right there. 11.7 acres. There are 11 adjacent lots along Lander Haven Drive across from the Rockwell Automation offices and the Lander Haven Event Center. We're proposing a development there with 179 total units. It'd be 78 independent living units, 63 assisted living units, 28 memory care units, and then 10 units within duplex cottages. with a portion of the site to remain undeveloped as well. We had an initial meeting some months back with the neighbors there, got some great feedback from them, some good constructive comments, and we've made some changes to our proposed plan that we would like to submit along with the rezone, should the council let us. I've tried to kind of keep it brief, but whatever you want to get into, ask questions, I'm here to answer them, along with Dan Neff, our civil engineer.
Thank you. We should refer to planning, and then they will be back, I'm sure, to address council at a later date.
Exactly.
But thank you, Mr. Neff and Mr. Russ, for coming
Great.
and keeping council in the loop.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else this evening that would like to be heard? It is now 7:14, and we will close our public portion. We will first move on to resolutions, and we'll begin with Resolution 2017-66. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Resolution number 2017-66, a resolution reversing the action of the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Mayfield Heights in granting to Michael Pagel, 1674 Woodrow Avenue, a variance to allow a commercial vehicle to be parked in the driveway at 1674 Woodrow Avenue, Cuyahoga County, permanent parcel numbers 863-06-096 and 097. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mr. Mercurio, seconded by Mrs. Finney. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Snyder, seconded by Mr. Mano. So I actually asked our law director to clarify this because we had so many questions today, and I did not want to give the wrong response to council members. So Mr. Murphy, would you please explain why we're doing this? We've never done it before.
I will. There's never been the need to do it before. A couple of years ago, we had several appeals, and I looked at the codified ordinances and saw some inconsistencies. So I rewrote that section 1157.07 regarding procedure before the Board of Zoning Appeals in light of the fact that state law, section 2506.01 of the revised code, requires that if you have to take an administrative appeal, which would be from a planning commission or a Board of Zoning Appeal, from a final order, adjudication, or decision. And in Mayfield Heights, the Board of Zoning Appeals makes the decision about the variance, but it's not, in my mind, considered a final order because council ultimately makes that final decision. It goes to council by resolution, and council by resolution then decides whether or not to accept the recommendation of the Board of Zoning Appeals. The way the ordinance originally read, or most recently read, said that council may modify or reverse a decision of the board. It didn't say anything about confirming this decision of the board. So this was amended 2 years ago, I guess, to provide that council would make the final decision based upon the recommendation of the BZA. And that final decision would be either to confirm or to modify or to reverse, depending on what council wanted to do. I didn't consider the resolution that was adopted at the last meeting where council failed to confirm. I don't think that's a final order, and I'm not sure it would pass muster if the property owner determined to appeal that. So I think council has to take affirmative action to either by resolution confirm or modify, and modify, obviously, make some changes, or reverse. And by not adopting whether or not you were going to confirm, I don't consider that to be a final order. So, I put this resolution, or this ordinance, I should say, on this agenda, which clearly states that council is reversing the recommendation of the Board of Zoning Appeals, so that the property owner has a means, that has a final order that he can take if he chooses to appeal it to Common Pleas Court, because that's gonna be his next avenue. So, that's where we are. Questions? As Mr. Mercurio said, it's more of a procedural type thing than anything else.
Mr. Mano?
How long after this affirmation does the applicant have to remove that vehicle, because it is still parked there?
This, if it is adopted as an emergency, which it does not have the emergency language, he would have 30 days.
30
That's
days.
when this resolution would take effect.
Okay, thank you.
Madam President,
Mayor?
he has received a ticket, a citation.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question. I don't know if the mayor or you can answer, Mr. Murphy. What are the two parcels? Isn't that one parcel, or why does it have two parcel numbers?
Because it's two separate parcels. I looked at it on the auditor's tax map, and there are two parcels that are separate permanent parcel numbers, both of which front on Woodrow. And he's got the house that fronts on Woodrow, but then the garage fronts on the cross street, Marsall. But there are two parcels, so the house is, I think the house is on one, it may even be on the second one too, and then the garage is on the second one, so it's two parcels. I'm not sure they're two separate buildable lots, but the way it is, there's two parcels.
Thank you. I just wondered what that was.
I wondered too.
Yeah. Okay. So roll call on the motion to approve. Oh, Mr. DeJohn, one moment. Mr. DeJohn, did you have something to say? I
So a vote
apologize.
of yes would be reversing.
Correct. The legislation is written in the affirmative that you will reverse, which means that his request, Mr. Pagel's request for a variance, is denied. And that's what he would appeal if he so
Thank you.
chooses.
Thanks, Mr. DeJohn. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressy?
Yes. Resolution 2017-66 has been approved. We will now move on to ordinance number 2017-20. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ordinance number 2017-20, an ordinance continuing a moratorium on granting any building permit or certificate of occupancy for any building, structure, use, or change of use that would enable the cultivation, processing, or retail sale of medical marijuana for a period not to exceed 6 months from the effective date of this ordinance and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mrs. Finney. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressy?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Snyder, seconded by Mr. Mano. Council did approve a prior ordinance granting a moratorium on any building, excuse me, or certificate of occupancy in the past, and I believe that moratorium has expired. By granting this would place another 6-month moratorium of the same. Am I correct, Mr. Murphy?
Yes, you are, and to elaborate a little bit, the state legislature is still, rather than the legislature, it's one of the administrative committees is still looking at the regulations to determine the whys and wherefores of having a medical marijuana dispensary. So rather than guess what they're going to do, I'd just like to have this moratorium in place so that once the regulations are effective, then the city can look at it and decide what, if anything, it wants to do with regard to medical marijuana.
Mrs. Finney, did you want to add?
Yes, no, you know, the only thing I'm questioning, because I hate to give it another 6 months, I've been noticing that other cities have been coming up with legislation. And I mean, if we're waiting this long, are we not protecting ourselves and being proactive? I don't know what cities, but I thought South Euclid, Mayfield Village, I was just kind of skimming through the Googling stuff.
Yeah, I don't think you're really losing any ground in continuing the moratorium unless council determines by a majority that we do not want such an establishment in the city of Mayfield Heights, in which case then it can be done by ordinance, and then you'd be done with it, because you are allowed to say, no, we will not have a marijuana dispensary in the city. My thought is that wait and see what the regulations are, see what, you know, the whys and wherefores are, and then make a determination at that point. But if there's a majority of council that, you know, would feel under no circumstances, no matter what the state says, will there be any marijuana dispensary, then, you know, we could do an ordinance immediately.
Thank you.
Next meeting.
Mr. Mano, did you want to
Yeah,
add something?
a real quick question. Will it matter if the state comes forward with their regulations, and at that point we decided to produce an ordinance? Would that lessen our ability to control that situation?
That's what I'm-
If we waited, maybe we should put legislation together and pass the ordinance.
The state law indicates that a city at any time can enact an ordinance banning the medical marijuana dispensary, so that can be done at any time. That's a possibility. So yes, you can do that now if you
I
want.
would think it'd be prudent to go ahead and do it and have it done with, instead of every 6 months redoing this thing. I mean, the cities around us have most of them have gone ahead and did it for monetary purposes. But I really don't think we need to have something like that in Mayfield Heights. We got enough headaches up here with drugs and everything else.
If you'd like to sponsor an ordinance, I can, you know, draft it.
I would be willing to sponsor
Put it on the next
Yes,
agenda.
absolutely.
Okay.
Any other comments? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes, ordinance 2017-20 has been adopted. We'll move on to motions. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Motion, authorize the sale of vehicles through govdeals.com. A 2007 Ford Focus ZE, VIN number 1FAHP34N27W333870. A 2007 Ford Focus SE, VIN number 1FAHP34N17W335139. A 2007 Ford Fusion, VIN number 3FAHP06Z37R 277584, and a 2013 Dodge Charger, VIN number 2C3CDX8T4DH689940.
Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mrs. Finney, seconded by Mr. Mercurio. Mr. Tribby, would you like to add anything?
The two Ford Focus vehicles formerly were used by the building department, currently by the service department. Service director is recommending they be sold. The Ford Fusion and Dodge Charger are used in the police department. We've taken delivery, and I'm pretty sure all three of the 2017 Explorers are in service. Chief is recommending selling these two vehicles.
Thank Thank you. Any other comments or discussion? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes, this motion has been carried. I need a motion to move into executive session. Moved by Mr. DeJohn, seconded by Mrs. Snyder. Roll call on the motion.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressi?
Yes, the purpose of our executive session is to discuss property acquisition. The motion has been moved and seconded. Our business, it will be in recess right now at 7:32.